so glad you're here today. I have a special guest. My heart is full just thinking about this podcast. And her name is Ardice Lorscheider. I pronounced that right?
You did. Good job, Shelley.
Okay. And she is such a unique and beautiful soul. You can just feel the spirit glowing through her. And so I am so excited to have her on the podcast today. She has something special about gardening that she's going to share with us. But I'm going to go ahead and let Ardice introduce herself a little more.
Well, thank you so much, Shelley. It's so great to be with you and your listeners. I love what you're doing and the message that you're sharing. So it's just an honor for me to be with you today and share a little bit about what I'm doing. I started a company about a year ago called Ardice & Co. And the reason why I called it Ardice & Co. I found out a few years ago that my name Ardice actually is for Hebrew for flowering field, which is very unique, and very garden-like,
Yes.
right? So I put my name on there and co for company, people that come to the company. And most of all, I'm a woman of faith. And I think of my Savior really being the head of this company and the things that we're doing. I often say I'm doing it for him. Anytime I do an Instagram post or a Facebook post, you'll see at the end of it, I do #for him. And I just always say a little prayer before I send it out in the universe, some goodness. But I started this company a year ago, and I can get a little bit more into that, but I'm a mother of 3 fun, delightful, energetic little girls that keep me on the go. It took us over 20 years to have all 3 of them. So lots of infertility treatment, and we're very grateful to have them here. And my oldest has some special needs, and any of you that are listening that know a special needs child or have a special needs child, you know that they immediately make life better. It doesn't mean it's easier, but they open your eyes to what life is really about. And so I'm so grateful to have her and be on her journey. And then I've got a sweet husband that puts up with all these girls in the household. You know how that's like, Shelley. You've got all girls, and then I've got a sweet dog, a Barbet. We call him Mr. Summit. That's his name. And then we just recently adopted 2 new bunnies. So we've got sweet little buns in our home right now. So we live in beautiful Alpine, Utah. And that's just a little background.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Yes, you do have sweet girls. They're wonderful. So tell us about your special gardening. You have what's called generational gardening, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah, so the concept really, I think with anything good, it takes time, right? It starts off as that analogy, that little seed under the ground, and the idea and the dream that you have just keeps growing and developing. And I always, we have some property in the back of our yard that we've never developed. And my husband's dreaming of a basketball court, something very manly, right? And I'm dreaming, of course, of a secret garden, right? Like, we love that story of the secret garden. I'm like, oh, how cool would that be to have a secret garden back there? So I started designing a few years ago and dreaming about this garden. And I have a dear friend named Emily Brooks Wayment, and she is just so gifted in landscape design. And she was able to come on board with me, and we started creating this garden in our minds and then sketching it out. And it has 3 sections. There's really 3 sections in this one main garden. And the first section is a garden that's called the children's garden, right? Where you find joy and happiness. So it's all children's. We've got an 18-foot teepee there. We've got a flower bed that literally is a bed that we put flowers in and have fun with. And so it's just a lot of joy there. We're going to put the bunny house out there this summer. So a lot of joy happening in the children's garden. And then we have a garden that I like to call the learning garden, where we're going to have classes and workshops, and we're going to find connection and learn together and have a place of learning. And then the third garden probably is one of my favorites. It's the heart healing garden, and it's actually shaped like a heart with lavender shaped around it. And we all have those moments in our lives that we need to heal our hearts or find that connection. And so that's going to be a place for anybody that needs to come and have that peaceful moment. And I want to provide this, service to people to come, but I also want to inspire people to take parts of that in their own lives. Not everyone can create sections of gardens, but you can bring that nature in your own lives. And so I really feel like the garden and the tool of gardening is really a creation of him, and it just has his light and his goodness. And when we're surrounded by it, it lifts us up and it connects us to him. And so by doing gardening and this unique way of generational gardening, we're really connecting with him. And I like to use the phrase generational gardening because I learned gardening from the example of my grandparents and my own parents. They always had a flower, yard full of flowers, vegetable gardens. And I just loved being with them. One of my sweetest memories was being in my grandmother's rose garden. She had these beautiful roses, and I would just watch her and smell the beautiful roses. And she would take fresh clippings and always had fresh flowers during the summer in her house in Burley, Idaho. And I just started really realizing that we pass down not only those traditions, but that love that we have connected to the earth and to nature. And so now that I've learned from my grandparents and my parents, and now I'm sharing it with my children. And I don't feel like you need to know everything about gardening, right? There's so much to know, but you can take those little seeds, that little enjoyment, like my grandmother bringing in her roses to share with her family, that kind of passing along that legacy. And I can do fresh cut flowers in my own yard, so it's just that way of that environment of making gardening a tool to find connection and healing and joy in our lives.
I love that. And as I was thinking about your generational gardening, my grandmother, I grew up, she had a huge garden and she didn't live too far from us. And I spent many hours in that garden, and that's where I gained that love of gardening through her. And I've planted, I have a garden that's, the vegetables and stuff that she would do, but I also have some flowers that remind me of my other grandmother because they were her favorite, the African daisies. And just that generational connection and that joy that brings through that is beautiful. And I love your creation process that you went through. I mean, you're creating, gardening is, there's creation that happens, but you went through this process of thinking about it and putting it out, and then now creating this beautiful place for people. I love that. So you shared some different points about your garden. So it brings joy that in the children's garden. That is so beautiful. So how can you expand on that of the joy that the generational garden brings?
Well, I think it happens so naturally, just like what you were saying, Shelley. You're connected with the way that you're gardening and you're taking care of your land with each of your grandmothers in their own unique ways. And I think back to my grandfather had this amazing vegetable garden, and he really always tended to it. And then at the end of the season, he'd have these amazing sugar snap peas, right? So I remember sitting with him and we had to get the peas out of the pod. And I literally probably ate more peas than I put in the bucket. I kept eating the peas because they were so fresh and so good. And, but I remember just sitting there doing that with him and just talking with him and having that connection and having that moment. And I literally, every time I see sugar snap peas or anything, I'm like, Grandpa. I just think of Grandpa. And so it connects me with him, even though he's already passed. I still always remember that cherished memories, and just being able to take that part of that experience that I had of a child and then teach my children and have my own unique experiences with my children or other people. I mean, it brings me joy. And I think too, it doesn't just have to be our families. I mean, the love that we have for gardening can extend beyond our own boundaries. Yes. And I love fresh cut flowers. There's nothing that beats fresh cut flowers. And especially if I can get them from my yard, if I can make a quick little bouquet and just put it in a vase and take it to a neighbor in need, that is joy to me. Yeah. That is uplifting to me. That's generational gardening. I'm sharing with another. I'm connecting. I'm having the joy from the experience of it.
I love that. Yeah, it's not limited to family, like you said. That's beautiful. And I have a neighbor that is a master gardener. And when I first went to meet her, she wasn't home, but I saw her yard and I was just like, oh my goodness. And I talked with her on the first podcast actually, and just that joy. And she has shared a lot of her plants with me that has brought me joy. And then I can share those with others. And I love that. And my girls want to do a cut flower garden as well. So we're going to be adding that to a garden. We're redoing our garden. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, see, Shelley, you're already doing generational gardening and you didn't even know it. And I
Right.
think it's an awareness of how we're living in our intentions and taking that beauty of nature and that creation and bringing it in and to strengthen ourselves and sharing it with others, you know. So you're already doing it. You're a pro.
Yeah. So I love, and yeah, it's connecting everyone. And you talked about the connection and how, for me, nature is just a connection to my Father in heaven, especially, and just how that can connect us to each other. It's beautiful. So, and then you talked about your healing garden. Can you tell us? I love it. For me, it's a therapy. Nature is a therapy. It's a healing. Just to step outside, take a deep breath. Can you expand more on the healing garden?
I think that we're already doing the gardening and it's already healing us and we don't realize the power that it has. I mean, it's one of the most therapeutic things that we can do. Get outside, get our hands in the dirt, connect with him and the beauty. And so with the healing, you know, there's many moments that I look back in my life, and one particular, like I shared earlier, our daughters took us many years to have. And my oldest one, it took her 10 years to get into our arms. And before that, I had lost several babies, which is just a heartache to experience, to go through. But I remember one time, after losing a child, I was like just really down and my heart was breaking and not knowing where I needed to go. And I knew I needed a solution and something that would lift me up and help me in this healing process. And I remembered back to my grandmother's garden, this beautiful rose garden that she had. So I just was like, I've got to do something because I'm just sitting here sad, you know, I'm not moving forward. And so I went to my favorite garden store and I found this beautiful David Austin rose. And if you've ever smelled David Austin roses, they have the most beautiful scent on them. And I got this white one and I put it out in my yard and I went through infertility treatment again and got pregnant. And of course, I was cautiously optimistic, like hoping I would keep this child again. But anytime I had doubt, because it was still there, that hurt was still in me. Anytime I had doubt, I would go out to that rose bush and I would smell it. And I would just say, okay, I'm okay for this moment. This is healing me. That rose bush healed me so much and helped me through that process that when my sweet little Emmy was born, her middle name is Rose, after that rose bush and after my grandmother's rose garden. And so I really took that beauty of nature and that power that's there to heal what was hurting in my heart at the time and give myself that hope that I needed. And so there's many ways to use gardening to heal. I'll give you another example. Another time that I had lost a child, like I said, it had been quite a journey. I just was frustrated. I had the biggest weed, biggest weed, like in my backyard. It was deep down into the cracks of the rock wall. And I tried to pull it. And I needed to do something. So I went out to just pull weeds, right? You're frustrated and you're angry. And I'm starting to I'm like, I'm going to get that weed. I've been watching this weed. It's like as big as a cabbage. It's like,
Oh, wow.
It's just huge, right? So I'm out there and I'm just yanking on it and yanking. And I tried, I don't know, for 20 minutes. I'm going to beat this weed, right? I'm not going to let this weed beat me anymore. It became a challenge. And I started doing it and I stopped. And I thought, I forgot to pray for strength.
Wow.
And I took a moment and prayed to my Father in heaven for strength. And I put my hands back on that weed and I pulled it right out.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So I'm not saying I have that luck with every weed I do, but that was a special experience for me
Yeah,
to show me that there is power in gardening to heal when we connect with our God, you know, who's there. And so there's lots of different ways that we can use gardening as a tool to heal in our lives. So
I love
so
that.
pray for the weeds, right? Pray for
That's
the weeds. Get them out.
they're not only for affliction, they're for growth, right? So
Yes, yes.
what a beautiful lesson in that, and that weed probably had some deep roots, and that, you know, sometimes things fester in us for a while or are really hard to get rid of, but through the Savior and through our Heavenly Father's help, we can get rid of those, that we can overcome those difficulties in our life. What a beautiful lesson
Yes.
with the weeds.
Yes, even with the weeds and things that we think that are beyond our abilities. It's when we draw on his power and his ability that all things are possible. And that's what I learned in that humble weed lesson, that, you know, to ask for that strength. So obviously it was really reflecting what was going on in my life at that moment. So it was very healing.
That's beautiful. And I love the roses and how healing, and that was that connection to your grandmother, but it also was helping you heal through her and her example of sharing those flowers. And then you made that connection through the difficulty you were having and helping you heal. That's beautiful. And then you gave your daughter the middle name of Rose. What a beautiful reminder of strength. So do you have any other experiences with connection? Because I mean, to me, you said about joy and healing and all these things, but they're all connection. They're all helping us connect to our Heavenly Father, to others. Do you have any more experiences that I know that you have something coming up in your mom's name, a brunch, correct? Can you
Yes.
share a little bit? Because to me, that's a beautiful for your mom, and just the love you have for your mom. Can you share about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So I knew creating this garden that this wasn't going to be just something for our family and friends, that this was going to be an extension. And I really see it as a stewardship over this land. You know, I feel like all land is really his land, and we just get to be stewards over it and care for it. And so when my sweet mother passed away just over a year ago, and I started the company of Ardice & Co. It was actually last summer. I was in the garden as we were planting some plants and trees, and I just thought, what could I do to bring people to the garden? What is something that I could do special? And I thought about a brunch. And my mother, a way that I always celebrated Mother's Day with her was to take her to brunch every year. It was just
Oh, okay.
something we did, right? It was something we shared together. And my mother loved gardening, as I've shared, but also she loved people connecting. She was a good friend. Anybody that knew her was lucky to be her friend. And your parents were her friend, and she loved your parents, you know. So that beautiful connection of friendship and people coming together. And so then I thought, well, why didn't I do a brunch in her honor and just name it after her? And so we're calling it Louise's Garden Brunch. And it's going to be May 7th at 10:30 a.m. And it's going to be in the backyard, surrounded by the garden. We're going to have a catered brunch, musical performance from the Three Reds, which is a mother two daughter team, which is that generation right there. And we're just inviting women to register and come on at ardiceandco.com. And we're just going to have a beautiful event, an environment. We want to have this connection, this beauty of nature as we're taking this time to celebrate beautiful mothers in our lives, and just having a quiet moment. Sometimes we're so fast in what we're doing that this will allow us to have that connection, that beautiful environment. And it really was, to me, what my mom is all about, you know, bringing people together with nature. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to do it. And it's not going to just be our one-time thing. We're going to do this every year. This is going to become a staple of Artists and Co. as we're really encouraging connection with nature and with each other and ultimately with God.
I might have to make a special trip around Mother's Day
I
some
think
year
we do.
to come to the garden. Yeah, for those listening, you have to check out her garden, even on her Instagram, Artists and Co. And it is just amazing. When she started to share it, oh my gosh, it is so beautiful, and all the details. You handpicked many things, is that right? You went up to Oregon, that's where we're both from, and beautiful state.
Yes. Yes, we're
Uh,
both Oregonians. I had to get most of my trees from Oregon if I could. I love Oregon, but that's honestly where my friend selects her trees from. So we made a
oh,
special
okay.
trip up there and we went to several nurseries and tagged the trees. And then we waited about 8 months until they came to the spring. And it was interesting too, when the trees arrived, I had my daughter and I, one of them, we went around and we welcomed each tree. We gave
That's
them a little hand hug and we just said, you're in the children's garden, welcome. You're going to bring a lot of joy and there's going to be children running around you. And so each of those trees were officially welcomed into the garden. And we actually just dedicated the garden with a special prayer on April 6th. We made sure that that was the special date that we wanted to dedicate this garden to the purpose of what we're hoping that it does, to share some goodness and connect people to nature, to each other, and ultimately to a loving Father in heaven that creates. So
that is beautiful, and a beautiful date. That is, yeah, my husband and I were actually married on that date for purposes, because it's a deep root for our religion, right? For Jesus Christ.
yes,
And,
yes.
I love
That's
that.
a special anniversary. You'll always remember it, Shelley. You've
Yeah,
got a good date.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's so, I love your deep connection and welcoming the plants. That is so beautiful. My daughters, when we go out to the garden, I tell them no electronics in the garden, because I want them to connect with just nature. And so they'll start singing with each other. And it's just so beautiful because and then some of them, when they go out and work on their own in the garden, they say, yeah, I was singing to the plants, because to bring them more love and stuff. And so I love that you welcomed all those plants in the garden and then said that's prayer for them and for the garden, and to bring in so much love. I can feel the love pouring from you. It's just amazing. And all that you're doing is so beautiful.
Well, I love that you sing with your daughters in the garden, Shelley. I think that's amazing. And they will always remember that. They will always remember that they did that with you.
Yeah. I actually have one of my daughters visiting from school break right now, and she was the one that didn't really like to be in the garden. And she came home and she's like, how come you didn't teach me about this and this on the plants? And I said, you didn't want to learn. Your sisters know that stuff. And so she's like, okay. And I said, I can teach you now if you'd like. And she's like, yeah, I'd like you to do that. So, sometimes it just takes a little longer, but she came back to it. So I'm so excited for that she wants to get into the garden and that connection there. So, and just healthy reasons and stuff. So it'll be fun.
I love that.
I appreciate you being with us, Ardice. I did want to have you share about the true seed tip and about that, because I've noticed you were saying, on Instagram, this is my true seed tip. And I love that. So will you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I love, gardening in a simple fashion. I don't feel like it needs to be overwhelming, and it can be something very simple, very tangible, like a little seed. So of course, one of my favorite scriptures is found in the Book of Mormon in Alma, and it talks about the good seed, the true seed, that scriptural reference that we have, and just planting that good seed and nourishing it and letting it grow. And so I just took that phrase, the true seed, and I just do true seed tips. So it could be something very simple, how to make sure that when you can cut a peony when it's ready to cut, or something that's just going to make your life a little bit easier when you're doing gardening and find a little joy in it. So I do a little video sections on True Seed tips. It could even be about flower arrangement. That's the beautiful thing about gardening, is it has such a broad span. It's not always hands in the dirt. You know, it might just be about making some homemade salsa from some tomatoes that your neighbor shared with you, that they had too many, right? So that's the thing, is I just try to share those sweet little True Seed tips when I'm just sharing knowledge about gardening.
I love that. And so all our listeners, if you don't live by Ardice, that's okay. You can get True Seed tips and see her beautiful garden through her Instagram. So that is such a beautiful way. Any last tips or True Seed tips, or any tips for our listeners about connecting with nature and God?
I think that one of the things to do when you're gardening, and however it is, because it is unique to you. I mean, every flower, even though if you might have the same color daffodils next to each other, are still unique and different. And we are like that. We are each unique and different. And I think when you go out and you find that way that makes you happy in the way that you garden, maybe it's indoor plants, just be conscious and aware of the experience that you're having and what you're enjoy doing. And like my mother and father love indoor plants. They're very good at keeping indoor plants. It looks like a forest sometimes in some of their rooms, because they're really bringing that outdoor in, but they love it and they enjoy it. And I think just share that experience with someone else. That's that generational gardening, passing that on. So if you love like indoor plants, you know, maybe get a fun plant and share it with a neighbor on their birthday or a special occasion or an anniversary. And I just say, find a way to use what you love, how you love to garden, how you love to connect with him, and share it with other people. And you're probably already doing it, but just be aware of it. And that awareness will make all the difference. And you'll learn from your experience. It will bring you that healing, it will bring you that connection, and it will bring you that joy. So
Thank you so much. This has been so beautiful and such a privilege to have you on today, Ardice. And we look forward to seeing the growth in the garden and how it continues to connect people and heal and bring joy. And so follow Ardice. We'll leave links in the show notes, and you'll be able to connect with her. And if you're local, you can connect and go to the brunch. And just follow other ways that Ardice is blessing the lives of many through this generational gardening. Thank you so much, Ardice.
thank you, Shelley. That's so fun. And thank you for your listeners. And I'd love to hear back from them as well, if they have any tips, True Seed tips that they found out, because I'm still learning too. And that's just about us working together. So I appreciate your audience and their knowledge and yours as well. So thank you.
Thank